Something.
You look familiar.
I know that like fan service can be very gratuitous in the MCU, but I feel like this one is one that we really truly do deserve, more so than all the other stuff, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Rachel Weisz is a treasure.
Mhm.
And so is Kalamaui. But yeah.
Yes. Oof. Need it. Has to happen. Oh my gosh. So yeah, like, you know, once the like action kind of dies down, they're on their way following the instructions to get to Amit's tomb, and they start kind of talking about how, you know, Mark is slightly relieved that because Khonshu is gone, it means that he should have full control of the body and that Mark should be leaving too. Which because, you know, we still don't entirely know whose body it was first, but I really liked that, you know, Layla spoke up for her agency and being like, well, you know, I'm his wife and I want to know why, you know, I wasn't taken into consideration in having a choice on the matter, because this is someone who would have just disappeared on my life. And Steven very much is like more emotionally available than Mark, and he was like, oh, I feel bad, and kind of addresses that. Like, I thought that was wild. Like, what did you guys think about that sort of conversation and kind of where that leaves whose body is it as like this weird looming question?
I think it kind of goes back to what they were saying about Mark not being, as you say, emotionally available, because in episode 3 she was saying like, you got to open up to me, sort of thing, and then, you know, I would have been there for you, and then we get to see more of the fallout from that as, you know, Steven's taking over the body, so to speak, and then we overhear also like, how do I put it, that what Mark has experienced, Steven has also experienced in a way. So it's not like it's the first time for him, or kind of like paraphrasing it. So he's experienced it as well, basically. So now that Steven's in control, he gets to, I guess, dictate where the trajectory is going, I guess.
Yeah. Again, you know, this dynamic, it's the heart of this show, right? Like, this is a love story, but not between Steven or Layla or Mark and Layla. It's about Steven and Mark, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to get them to embrace themselves and work together in one body. And we'll get to it towards the end, but I think we're you know, these two characters, especially in this episode, kind of take steps towards this. But that central conflict is absolutely present at the beginning of this episode. Where it is at the end, of course, we'll get to. But yeah, I mean, I personally, my personal theory, of course, is that this is Mark's body, but I'm really just going off of the comics, and this thing hasn't done anything necessarily as similarly to the comics as other MCU titles have. And let's be honest, they take liberties. Like most of Marvel Studios' work is, you know, takes liberties on the source material, which is fine. But in this case, I still think it is Mark's body. You know, for reasons that we'll get to towards the end. And you know, I mean, like, Steven's fantastic. He's a really good guy, and he definitely deserves moments in the sun. But you know, these two just have to make it work. They have to find a way to make it work with one another. And I think that's the heart of the show. And I love that we're getting progress in that as well. You know, it's not just narrative progress; it's character progress. So yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. You know, I thought it was curious that in the last 2 episodes, Steven does not talk to his mom, you know? And I kind of immediately believe that, like, I think we talked about this in one of the earlier streams, where what if it's Mark who he calls, calls, like, what if it's Mark's number that, like, he is calling? And Mark, that used to be the way that Mark used to check up on Steven, by like getting these voice messages. And it kind of makes you wonder if, because they're now so closely in tune, like that necessity is absolutely gone. Because even when you're having Steven be like, it's my body now, he has much more constant communication with Mark through the reflection and has that back and forth. Particularly when it comes to like Steven and Layla flirting, you know, Mark's very much like, hey, I am still here
Yes.
and that is my wife. So you
He's
kind of
gotten
like,
more confident. Yes.
yeah, you kind of start to
Yeah.
wonder like how some of these things were really kind of laid out beforehand. And also just, you know, like what it could lead to. Kind of like touching back on the whole Layla and Steven flirting with each other because they're archaeology buds who happen to get romantical. I really, you know, like, is it cheating? Like, what do we think? This
So
technically is. I mean, technically, Mark and Layla are separated, so.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's true. And they have the papers to prove that, you know, they are on their way to being divorced. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily cheating because yeah.
I think it's giving Layla, you know, the perfect man. You know, that's what it is. Every shortcoming that Mark has, Steven can compensate for, and vice versa. So she deserves the perfect man. She's got it in both. That's what it is. No, I mean, like, I don't think it's. Is it cheating? I don't know. It's kind of weird. It is very much a unique situation. By the way, just I want to point it out that this is the second project Jeremy Slater has worked on where somebody has punched themselves in the face. There was a really great Umbrella Academy scene where somebody punches themselves in the face as well. So I think Jeremy Slater just loves having people punch themselves in the face. And who doesn't? It's hilarious. It's awesome. But yeah.
And they're like absolutely adorable together as they're like, you know, walking over to the tomb, and it's like a field trip for Steven, who's just been dreaming about an adventure like this for however long he's been conscious and cognizant of that being a goal of his. And you know, like they come across the tomb. I loved like just the way these shots were composed and the score like swelling underneath and very much like, you know, a sweeping like action adventure sort of vibe. I thought was just so perfectly done.
Yeah, I definitely think so. You know, we harken back to like the Mummy and to Raiders and to all of these really good projects. And you know, when you think about the relationships in those, whether it's Evie and Rick or you know, Indy and Marion, you always have these really winning romances in a lot of them. You know, romances to root for with really empowered women. You know, which I love. And I think that we're absolutely getting that here with Steven and Layla. And it's really adorable. It's really cute. I don't know. I'm just a fan of that. I love that they're throwing everything, you know, into this project to make it feel very Raidersy or very Mummy-ish, and it's sticking the landing so well. I love that. You know.
Definitely. And even like as they enter the tomb, we kind of make this turn, you know, like, oh yeah, like they figure out it's the Eye of Horus, it's a labyrinth, and you know, they just got to figure out where Amit's last avatar's tomb is, and they go like, well, the tongue's over here, so that's like the voice, so let's go toward that. And you're just like, yeah, this is so cool. And there's like some trapdoors and like things are happening around them, but then it kind of takes like a full 360 into like hardcore universal monsters and like some modern horror vibes. Like I recently had a movie night with my friends where we watched The Descent for the first time, and that movie is absolutely great and terrifying, and I literally thought of The Descent the entire time. I was like, there's some weird stuff happening in these caves, you know. They introduce the idea like when they go in, like, see, first of all, before it gets like entirely scary, they literally act really naive about it because they go into this like room where the Heka priests perform rituals, and they're like, oh, this is where they perform rituals, totally like nonchalantly, like they're like ancient and long gone, but like the slab in the room is covered in blood and fresh bits, and I'm like, there's no one noticing. Like,
It's
what is,
okay.
like, this is too fresh. Like, what?
I like that. Too fresh. Yes.
Yeah. What were
But
y'all's
yeah,
reaction to that whole
the
like?
I was just, yeah, they were just reacting like too casual about it. It's like, how come you guys don't? There's no way that that kind of, I guess, meat it stays fresh that long, because some ritual had to have been performed. But I, like you were saying, I like that whole classic horror movie vibes that was going on, especially as it went deeper into these caves and this whole labyrinth that that these tombs have, and it just opens up like this whole like mystery box of what's in it, what's at the next what's at the next turn, what's inside that dark void. You know something's coming. So I really liked how they amped up the scares in this, after, especially when they started out as a treasure hunting, tomb raiding sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really started out this show, with horror vibes, but modern day horror, like I referenced certainly in a couple of our conversations, The Mummy or The Conjuring or It, those kinds
Lights
of vibes.
Out.
Yeah, Lights Out for sure.
Yes.
And even Psycho to a degree. Now we're absolutely getting into Universal monsters horror vibes. And it's kind of amazing when 20 minutes of an episode of Moon Knight feels more like The Mummy than 2 hours of Tom Cruise, and
oh, you're not wrong.
Oh, throwing
you're
shade at the Tom Cruise Mummy.
Throw shade at Tom Cruise, but did that really feel like a Mummy movie? This did, and I love that. Just the sheer fact that we do get a mummy in this, and we do get somebody getting disemboweled and jars with like all of the organs in the it's creepy. I think it might be the bloodiest and the goriest that Marvel Studios is actually
yeah. And
but
honestly, like, even for it being on Disney Plus, and a lot of it is very much kind of like shot in a way that's not like fully graphic, it's a lot of that sound design and the crunching noises that really sell it, because you just like even want to hide, you're just like, I'm not looking, but I am looking.
yeah
Yes.
This show, man, it's getting crazier and crazier, and it's getting more and more mature, which I love that. I mean, like, I think Disney Plus is starting to get a little bit more trusting of that kind of mature content. I mean, when you start throwing Daredevil and the Defender series onto Disney Plus, by comparison, a small scene like this in Moon Knight, it's lighter, and it's actually a little family audiences. I can't believe I'm saying that about a movie or a show where somebody gets disemboweled, but family
yeah,
to watch this, and not nearly as mature as something like Daredevil, where somebody gets decapitated by a car door. But at the same time, the sheer fact that you're willing to go this deep in a Marvel Studios MCU, universe, it's a sign that they're ready for deeper forms and more mature forms of storytelling, and I think that's awesome. I'm all there for that.
Oh yeah. And this kind of just completely mashes all of the things we love together. And going back to the whole Descent thing, you have, although it's funny because like both Layla and Steven react like people do in like the found footage sort of movies, where they're like, oh, we have uncovered a cave, what is that? Oh, look, there's an arm with some like snake skin sewn onto it, how unique, we have made a discovery. And it's like, like, nope. I just when they like actually like separate and Layla goes off, I really thought that her whole sequence when she's scaling in the caves was so intense, and it has like, I think, one of the most iconic scares in Marvel and in recent horror, I would say, is when she gets snatched by the Hecka priest, like just from like the crevice. I was like, whoa.
That was one of the best uses of a jump scare in a Marvel, cinematic universe that I've seen in a long time. So yeah.
Just the imagery of seeing her just pulled into the darkness and you have no idea what the hell's going on. It is creepy. It is exciting. It is so not MCU, which is kind of a good thing, because people, when people criticize the MCU, and I don't necessarily fall into this category, I disagree with a lot of this, but people criticize the quote unquote formula. This is not formula. This is absolutely,
yeah.
and I love that.
Yes.
I don't think the MCU has ever done any shots like this before, and I'm so proud of them that they were able to, and they were able to build mood and tension and just absolute fear. Well, okay, the last time that they did a really good jump scare was in Loki, where they're in the palace and Ms. Minutes just pops up.
Oh, gee.
But this is
Yes.
Yes. You just reminded me of that whole sequence right now. But yeah, just looking into the darkness, like it's coming, but you just like, when is it coming? I can't stand it. And you guys were saying about the tension and the music, all of it coalesces so well together, and then right when it comes up, it does its job basically.
And I love how it doesn't bait us necessarily, and it really does lean into subverting expectations, because usually that's the point where like the maiden is taken and like the guy has to like find her and save her. It doesn't like cut away for you to like assume that has happened necessarily. You literally hear her like freaking like going at it with this creature in the dark. And like I think I was in my recap, I wrote, she's beauty, she's grace, she will slam a flare in your face. Like freaking like incredible.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
Nice
no one she doesn't fight with flair, so there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the design of the mummy too was really, really creepy. And when you just think about and say aloud that she was in a fight with a one-armed mummy that was trying to stab her with its arm bone, like that's hardcore. And there's something just awesome about that sentence,
Oh, for sure. And like, how creepy was it that Harrow was just watching nonchalantly the entire like ordeal and was like, I'm just gonna annoy her as she's dealing with this, like
He's
sure.
Like gaslighting SOB, honestly, man. That guy is just, yeah. He has a way with words for sure.
And he's like, this is the perfect time to like just drop in and let her know what I know. Like, and I like how she's just so exhausted and defeated. Not defeated in like she was defeated, but like just exhausted from like taking on this like dead like monster and having a people monster just like start to bug her and like be that sort of guy commenting like at her, and just kind of like being so patronizing and being like, oh, your father would be so proud, and calling her like the little scarab and saying, oh, don't you ever wonder why Mark all of a sudden showed up in your life? And, kind of beginning to just prod at his involvement with her father's death, essentially.
Yeah, no, Harrow is just a douche. I mean, like, it's also kind of upsetting that he's not even scared by any of the things that these guys are shooting at, like these mummy things, But yeah, I mean, he's a manipulative guy who's really good with his words. We've seen that in the past 3 episodes. You can't build a cult without being that manipulative and that clever and slick, with your dialogue. So naturally he knows how to get to her, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and she knows exactly what he's doing too. But unfortunately, it's a subject that is so personal and such, it's destroyed her for how many years of her life. So obviously she knows that she's falling for this, But she's ready, willing, and able to do it because it's of how personal and how big of a mystery it's been to her, and how detrimental it's been as well for her growing up, just having lost her father in this unfortunate circumstance. So yeah, he's a smart guy. We know this, and it's terrifying, to say the least.
Yeah, and he always like wants to be like a step ahead, and the way this sets up what happens later is just so seamlessly done, and Ethan Hawke just is so dang creepy and so effective as like this really charismatic person that can read anyone like a book, essentially.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I agree.
Dudes, like, so simultaneously to like this back and forth between Harrow and Layla, we have Steven
Oh.
just nerding out over the tomb that he finds for Amit's last avatar. And I know there have been like theories floating around about who it could be. I personally was a little shocked at the choice. I did not guess it, and I'm glad it wasn't someone that I could easily call as like, oh, that's who that is, because it definitely shows that just when you think that the show is getting on a track to like be in line with a comic book reference or whatever, it's like, no, we're also just pulling from our own imaginations in this story that we're trying to tell about certain types of people who go and invade places. So I personally was very psyched that Amit's last avatar that betrayed her was Alexander the Great,
Yes.
one of the OG colonizers, because the colonizers are the bad guys. And we're seeing it happen. I'm very excited for that being a key point here.
No, that was a nice deep cut though, because it goes to show that they don't want to be too, or Marvel doesn't want to be too predictable, and going like what you were saying, throwing that Alexander the Great, as as sort of one of the last bad avatars, because he was a colonizer, really shows that they're really to take things a little bit step further and be different and not placate to like any sort of traditional means of storytelling.
Yeah.
We've also been shrouded in mystery about what Amit. I mean, we know what Amit's motivations are, and certainly to us they seem evil. If you weren't convinced before, because I mean, like, when you put it on paper, yeah, stopping all crime overall is a noble cause, for somebody, maybe. But if you need more evidence as to how she is evil, just look at her choice of avatar. Just look at some guy that basically was a huge conqueror, went in and colonized Egypt and everything. And it's just, if that's the person that she chose, this world conquering person that's going to take over other people's civilization and is willing to kill and do all that, just to spill blood, just to do it,
and to make themselves godlike.
Yeah. What does that say about Robin? What does that say about her? So, or it, I guess.
I did not feel bad when Steven pulled the Upshaki out of the throat. Yeah. I was like, you break that face. Yep. Mike, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, so that makes me wonder about her choices in avatars now, because now it goes from world conqueror to this, seemingly smaller, but not that much smaller, but more cult-like leader. So who are these like avatars in between that time? That makes me kind of wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
she has a thing for people who are charismatic, people that will create a following, right? Yeah. I mean, like,
yeah.
You gotta wonder, it's not by accident that she chose someone as manipulative and as clever, for lack of a better term, as Harrow. You can only imagine that Alexander of Macedonia was the same. I mean, to get to amass an army, to get followers, all of that. You know, the next person after Harrow is going to be the best influencer on TikTok, you know, so
Oh boy.
but yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's too good. Okay. So then, as Steven is celebrating, I thought it was so adorable that he tries to present the Upshak. Oh my god, how do you pronounce this word? Shakti? I can't. How do we say it? The statue, the wet statue.
The wet statue.
Yes.
That's acceptable. We'll call it.
Yes.
It's canon. Yes.
I won't repeat it.
Figurine.
It sounded right.
Glorified Funko figure. That contains souls or entities or
But no
deities.
cupcakes.
No cupcakes though. Or are there cupcakes? But
Ooh.
yes. So he tries to present it as an award, and I was like, oh, Steven, too soon. Cannot do this right now. In our society, don't do this. Do not present it as an Academy Award. But yeah, like Layla comes in and is just like, can you put Mark in the body right now? I would like to speak to Mark. Oh my gosh. And he does switch over, which is great, but also very nerve-wracking because, like, there's no time to waste as soon as they have that statue, and they should really just be getting out of there. But Harrow, being one step ahead as always, knew that it would create enough of a stall that he could just roll up on them while they're having their discussions. And we do get to find out that Mark was there when her father died, and that his partner was a ruthless mercenary who killed all of the archaeologists who are part of the expedition and shot Mark as well. So that was part of the revelation, where he admits that this happened before they met, and she is upset because that basically she feels like he only went into her life because he felt guilty. I think this is like a very interesting scene because you get very caught up in this family drama because they are married, they are a couple, even if they're a throuple of some sort with Steven. And you get distracted too, and you know that they should be running, but like this conversation had needed to have happened. And you know, kind of like enlightens the situation even more so than gives us more context. What was everyone's reactions to how that went down?
Mike Lee, you want to go?
No, it's yeah, I thought it was like a really interesting way to bring more of the family drama, like you were saying, into the episode as we learn more about how Mark and Layla are tied together, and it just added a lot more context, and it also fell in line with the comics as well, as far as I remember, because in the comics we see that Mark was also, like you said, part of the expedition, and he was shot, and then somehow he became infused with, you know, Khonshu's powers and such. So yeah, that's
Yep.
It was a nice way to tie back into the comics, basically.
Yeah, this really goes back to Moon Knight #1 from 1980. As we talked about before, Moon Knight debuted in Werewolf by Night before getting his own series a couple of years later. That's how popular he got. But the origins of Moon Knight were never told in the Werewolf by Night series or the Marvel Spotlight series that he was featured in. They finally were told in Moon Knight #1. And this is exactly what this conversation is alluding to. For those of you who haven't read it or are in the know, and we should probably look for a QR code in this episode. I'm sure it's probably in there somewhere. But yeah, Mark had a partner named Raoul Bushman, who got greedy, as he said. You know, attempts to murder a professor that is, you know, basically guarding and excavating the tomb of Khonshu. And tries to get Mark to kill him. Mark refuses, so he kills, you know, the professor himself, and leaves Mark for dead in the desert as well, before Khonshu brings him to life. That's the event. Those are the events that Mark is describing. Now, granted that in the comics, that Marlene was the love interest, and her father was that professor, but they've of course switched it up, so it's Layla, and they created Layla for this series, which I think services the story and the setting a lot better than what the comics did. But having said that, I love that they're alluding to this. I think that's very, very, pertinent and crucial for people to know this about the character. So I'm glad that that's finally out in the open. Those answers really matter. They're really necessary. However, my one main criticism is in every movie, Marvel or otherwise, don't stop to have a heartfelt conversation in the middle of nowhere when people are coming after you guys. You can argue about this later, granted that you're still alive. You have to be alive to argue about it later.
Agree. Oh my gosh. Although in Mark's defense, when he tells Layla to run when Harrow shows up, I'm pretty sure he slipped Amit's statue into her stuff.
Ooh.
Like that is
my but
I didn't catch that, but that is a good catch, Sabina. Well, hopefully that pays off.
We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see.
With the way this, yeah.
With what happens right after, because
yeah.
Harrow basically is like, bang, you're dead.
Done.
I mean,
nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You're dead. Just and it goes into the light, literally.
Go into the light, and he like sinks into this like shallow pool of water behind the tube.
I was gonna say,
but then it gets very deep, and you're like, oh no, what is happening now? And
shallow pool.
Yo, this is the moment. This is where just things just go all haywire and bananas, and we get this interstitial that makes the screen like old school like television ratio.
Yeah.
Or old school movie ratio.
VHS style.
VHS style ratio of an Indiana Jones-esque sort of Englishman who is a archaeologist, and he has his token minority sidekick, which totally not calling out Indiana Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Although we got justice for a short round. If you haven't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, what are you doing? Go watch that movie. It's amazing. Yes. So we get this whole little like scene, and then we like pull back, and it's a mental institution. It's a pure white, stone cold institution, and literally everyone that we've encountered so far on the show is in there. There's a game of bingo being played. Everyone is like in their own little world. Someone is pushing a cart filled with cupcakes. Mark is basically strapped to a wheelchair, and he looks for Steven in his own reflection. There's no Steven. You overhear that the Tomb Raider dude's name is Stephen Grant, and you're just like, oh no. This isn't good. And it is revealed that Mark imagined this, allegedly, says the doctor, who is Harrow. Totally not suspicious at all. Like, what are everyone's thoughts on what is happening? And Mike, if you want to jump in on how it homages and is essentially the opening from the Lemire run.
Me, Mike, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you.
Moon Knight Mike.
Read it. Moon Knight Mike.
Moon Knight Mike.
Yeah, of course. That is the brilliance of this, in my opinion. You directly reference the old school origins of Moon Knight and cut directly into one of the more modern, celebrated runs of the character, Jeff Lemire's run of Moon Knight. And you're 100% right, Sabina. There's so much taken from this Easter egg wise, which I love. From the orderlies that beat him, pretty hard in the comics, to just the idea, to the movie itself, the fake Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. There's several moments in several issues of the Jeff Lemire run where Moon Knight is putting together this action adventure kind of Indiana Jones-ish movie. So we've been waiting forever to talk about this since I think the first episode of our show, because I think you and I had read the Lemire run and got really excited about where we knew this show was going to go.
Mhm.
How we can finally reveal that it is taking things directly from that run. And the thing that made things brilliant about that run was while the groundwork for the exploration of dissociative identity disorder and the mental issues that Mark Spector as a character faces were set by Warren Ellis. Lemire's run really doubles down on it. It hammers in there and fully explores it as the actual arc itself, which is why it's my favorite, arguably. The entirety of that run takes place in Mark's head. It is a way for him to, I don't want to spoil it because it might potentially be the direction that they're going, with this series. But it all takes place in his head, and Mark has to get control of himself and most importantly, accept his condition. So the fact that they're alluding to this, and what we're seeing right now, I strongly do believe this is all going on in Mark's head. It has to, right? The sarcophaguses and the identities being trapped in there and everything like that. And I think that this heart and soul of the series, where the two halves of his identity, Stephen and Mark, are at odds with each other. That love story that we were talking about at the beginning, it's coming to a climax here, because I think here is where he's going to start embracing his condition.
Literally.
Yeah, literally embracing his condition, and reconciling all of the different halves of his identity, including one.
I'll jump in really quick.
Yeah.
When he hugs Steven, because we do get a scene where skipping ahead from Harrow and Mark have like a whole discussion about, obviously him imagining all this, and you're just kind of like, this is all really sketchy. But when he does run and finds Mark in this like shaking tomb, they hug. You do not see a reflection for Steven. You just see like on like the marble wall or like the tile wall, you just see Mark's reflection.
That is a brilliant.
Yes, that's a brilliant catch, especially that opening when we see him being wheeled into the mirror. That's Mark. Yeah, that's a good catch. So,
but Mike, go ahead.
No. So do we think, just posing the question to everyone, who do we think this body really does belong to then? Is this definitively answer the question?
I think it introduces another unseen personality, to be honest. And,
sure.
It just leans into the whole idea of this unreliable narrator. Again, we've been so much talking about, because now we see these two people, but who's in control of that body? Because is this world that we are seeing, like, is it the present world? Is it in real time? Is it happening now, or is it in someone else's head, so to speak? So.
Yeah, I don't know whose body it is. I think it's Mark's body. Steven thinks it's his body. So we have that.
And then there's a mysterious character.
A mysterious tomb, mysterious sarcophagus that wasn't opened.
Yeah.
But based on what you mentioned, Sabina, and also just based on the origin story as well, that he's telling Layla, it's starting to become more and more apparent that I think Mark, the main identity, for lack of a better term, I think that this is his body, especially since he's got a reflection and Steven doesn't. I don't know. I mean, it's still yet to be revealed how differently they're doing these things from the comics. But let's say that that video, that Raiders of the Lost Ark knockoff existed, and that was a movie that Mark saw when he was a kid. It's very plausible that he would invent a persona for himself, like named Stephen Grant, after that character from the movie. So I think, yeah, it's very possible that I think it is Mark's body. That's what I'm guessing. But I will say as well, we're finally seeing Mark and Steven embrace and love each other. Mark couldn't be
It's
more
brotherly
happy,
love.
and I think that that's indicative of how their relationship is starting to really evolve. It's not the same relationship that we see at the beginning of this episode, or at the beginning of the series, and this time that they spent together arguing with each other. It's evolved into something more in a short amount of time.
Definitely.
Definitely.
There's so many things just from this whole sequence that you're just like, okay, everything is coming to a head here. Just to circle back over to the whole conversation with Harrow, I noticed upon watching it the last couple times, because I rewatched it a few times to kind of like really try to dig in to see if anything interesting was happening in like the details. We have like the portrait of the Alps, and we have, the decor all around Harrow is the kinetic jars, which are the jars where entrails will be put in for various figures, and each one has a different member of the Ennead head on it. And he's also very, very much wearing like scaly green is his fashion choice. So, there just seems to be like this is like very much both like like the mental institution, but also kind of very Alice in Wonderland, like where you don't really know what's real, what's not real. Um, and the whiteness of the entirety of it makes me wonder if they are also in like one of those Upshapti like statues, because
Oh.
especially with what happens next. But just in the regard of like, okay, like why would Mark be put in this? Why would you put him in the statue? Or what if he like gets absorbed by the statue?
Oh.
Mm.
Do
Because
you think?
it could be its statue, because there are some sequences in that sort of last act where when Mark's running through the hallway, it can't in like a like back and forth, like the scales being balanced, or the scales are in the balance sort of vibe. So like this could be Amit judging him.
Mm.
Hmm. Do you think this is where he could find Khonshu? Because we hear Khonshu saying, "Oh, tell Mark to find me." So.
It does make me wonder if, I mean, I do think it's apparent that the third sarcophagus that they're seeing is probably that third identity that everyone's theorizing it is. But what if it is Khonshu? What if that's how you break Khonshu out?
Mark also had an action figure of Moon Knight too that wasn't addressed, but I was like,
Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
Sabina, I gotta say, you are killing it with the catching everything this episode. It's awesome because there's so many.
I feel like I have to try extra hard to catch just like the film sort of clues, because I don't know the comics as well as a lot of like just people who know the comics as well. So I kind of definitely want to catch like the other stuff, and I'm just a nerd for like the context clues of the mythology, because I think that's such a big part of it. Like honestly, I didn't think it was a coincidence that it starts with Khonshu's statue. The whole episode, I forgot to mention this at the top, but the episode starts with Khonshu's statue being placed in a sort of shrine with other statues. And it kind of made me think about how when we went to the judgment in the other episode, how not all of the Ennead was there. And it makes you wonder, like, are there more members of it that are also imprisoned?
Mm.
So when we, get to the end, and with all of this going on, I'm kind of, wondering, like, there has to be something there, especially with like who imprisoned all these deities. And it kind of gets answered because they encounter a hippo-headed being who sounds adorable, by the way. I want to be friends with them. They're like, hi.
This like little high pitched kind of high.
Yes.
Like, oh
I immediately
gosh.
Googled, I was like, who has a hippo head? And it's Tauret, who is voiced and played by Antonia Salib. And they're the goddess of fertility and childbirth.
Mhm.
And someone we haven't met, so I kind of feel like she's also trapped in there with them. So I feel like it's definitely a Inception prison sort of situation that they're in.
So yeah.
Mhm.
Whose
No, go
head
ahead.
would it be in then? No, I was going to ask if it is an Inception, where is his prison, or who is in the mind prison, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're putting the statue of Khonshu in this I guess like shrine or trophy room, for lack of a better term, with all of these other statues around, it's got me thinking, maybe if this isn't Mark's head, maybe it's the afterlife, and maybe that's where everyone in a statue is. I didn't get a good look at the trophy room. Call it the trophy room because I don't know what else to call it. Where they put Khonshu's statue. Did anyone see a hippo statue anywhere there?
I don't
Might
think
have to rewind it, but yeah, I didn't see one.
I have a bizarre frame of reference for this thing. So at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, they had a maze last year called the Icons Maze. And basically, it was very similar. Like the entrance to that maze had these carved out holes, and each carved out hole had a statue of each Universal Studios Orlando icon, because they have their own slate of in-universe characters for their mazes that are their original creations. And it kind of was very similar to where like they all had like these little like candles and stuff. I'm sure I should have looked up what are these shrines that like are made for gods or whatever. But yeah, like that was like my weird frame of reference for it, where I was like, oh, like they're all in this portal, like past like whether it's the afterlife or where they like have descended to, because as Harrow says in his like whole like, oh, you're not well speech, no tree can ascend to the light of heaven if it doesn't descend to the depths of hell, which is a Tomb Buster quote from the movie apparently. But also like, okay, so we're in hell, like that is I think where we are. And there's judgment to be had.
Is that why sort of and I guess maybe you sort of address this by calling out the scales, Sabina, but things get very Inception-y because like the things are tipping, and the floor is sort of tilting, and at various points in this episode. So yeah, maybe that's what is going on. Maybe it's judgment, that's topsy-turvy, so that is very interesting. When you think about and I'm sorry, what's the hippo god's name again? I'm terrible.
Tauret.
Her representing fertility, it literally couldn't have less to do with this story, in my opinion, or with Mark. So I gotta wonder, why her of all avatars or of all gods? What does she have to do with Mark's story? Does she know a little bit more about Mark as a child, maybe as in his childhood, or is she there to help pass judgment for whatever reason, or guide him to the afterlife? Like I really want to know that answer. And that's that. I
maybe
think
she's there to help him connect his inner child.
Maybe.
Or be reborn in sort of a, not traditional way, but a reborn because we saw him get shot. So,
I really like that. That's a good question. I mean, like, I honestly don't know where the hell this goes from here.
Well, especially considering like in the comics, it's not Harrow that he talks to, and obviously not to get into spoilers and stuff. You kind of begin to wonder, like, there is both like I said earlier, like when you think they're leaning into these references, they all of a sudden like dip into something else and lean into something more original to keep us on our toes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because of Moon Knight's Rogues Gallery, and it's not a very well-known Rogues Gallery or anything, but you have classic characters like Raoul Bushman. You've got the Midnight Man, and you do have, especially in the Lemire run, Khonshu himself is something of a villain. But you've never really Arthur Harrow in the comics was so obscure. So for them to choose him, you know, and to not choose the iconic characters, there's got to be a point, a reason, a purpose why. And either it's just to keep us guessing and keep us on our toes and invent this crazy, wild, amazing ride that they've concocted, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, it's just no telling where this is going to go, and I'm so excited. I'm really ready for the rest of this. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I really hope we don't get like one of those like episodes before the season finale where they kind of like freeze time or whatever, and you're just in that for most of it before you like jump back into the action, because that happened a lot in Legion. I think specifically Legion, it was like we stayed in David's head for like a whole episode and time was frozen, and like you're like, okay, I know like stuff goes down right afterwards, we need to get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just hopefully we like just get 2 hours worth of a thrilling conclusion, and Layla being incredible. I would trust her with my heart for sure. So she has to save the day. I refuse to believe that Mark imagined Layla being a badass, because like then it kind of would erase us having a really badass character in the MCU. And I don't think it was a lie. I think it was real.
I definitely is real.
I think it's real. Yeah. This is all in someone's head or in a different plane of reality. That's what I had to think. And, you know, it's happening at a much faster time, I guess, and everything else that's happening in the real world, it's slower, I guess. That's how I had to say it.
Yeah. It's the inception time, right? Where
it's the inception time, where dreams happen like 3 times faster than, you know, what's happening now in real time. So,
falling backwards, and it takes like 2 hours for him to actually do it.
He's still like barely waiting in this pool. You know,
in the shallow pool too. So
shallow,
it's not really
in the shallow. Oh my gosh! Yes, I'm excited. It's gonna be great. Oh my gosh. And we get this right before like Multiverse of Madness, and I'm just like, this.
Oh my gosh!
This has to like all just come together.
That's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most. You know, I mean, they're not gonna screw us over on a post-credit scene. And I think that post-credit scene has to time Mark into this great verse. So I am so excited to see. That's the one of the things I'm most excited of with this character, is seeing how he's going to interact with everyone else, and how he's going to get introduced into the fold. So
the season finale happens before, you know, it opens. Doctor Strange opens. So
the week before.
The week before,
or is it the week of?
I think.
The week of. I think it's the week of.
Oh, it is the week of.
It's the week of. That's ingenious. That's
ingenious. Oh, that is real close. That is very, very close.
I think, probably that's why that's, okay. Now I see why some people are doing stuff. Okay. I don't want to spoil anything, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But,
Oh, okay, y'all. We're gonna wrap things up and go around and let everyone know where they can find you. And we'll start with Michael Lee.
Hi, so I am Michael Lee. You can find me at I am Michael J. Lee on Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok, Instagram. And I write for That's It LA, We Live Entertainment, The Nerds Color, and Geeks of Doom.
And I'm Mike Manalo. You can, at TidyBoyBoy182. You can find me on The Nerds of Color, WhatToWatch.com, and That's It LA. and you can also find me in the shadows. Like, hang on.
Oh, he's the Moon Knight has taken him. All right, everyone. I'm Sabina Graves. I am your host. You can find me on Twitter at Sabina has no R and on Instagram at Cool Places with Us. You can catch my Moon Knight recaps over on IO9 Weekly, as well as some fun videos about the series and kind of trying to tie things together with the MCU. I think there's still something about all the purple energy that we have seen in this series connected to other places we've seen that in, like Spider-Man and even Shang-Chi with like the demons that are sucking souls out, y'all. Like there is something, some deity orchestrating all of this, and they are deceiving people, pretending to be one person, but they're not the other person. I don't think Arthur Harrow is going to be justified because I think he might be in on it, but we will find out very soon. I think we're going to actually get who the big villain has been in Multiverse of Madness.
Kang.
Or Kang's role in that as well.
Kang's wearing purple, remember?
He's wearing purple. Oh, and like one of the characters had, I saw an awesome breakdown on New Rockstars where they pointed out that the kid who was one of the disciples had like a version of Kang on his jean jacket. And I was like, oh, that is so cool. Like we're all sleuthing. We're sleuthing all over the place for this.
It's not Mephisto.
He who shall not be named, or is, I mean, like, set. I don't know. I'm not gonna name it. We'll see. We'll see who it is. We'll see who it is. Although, really quick, I will point out that I saw an action figure for the God Butcher character, and he has like fingers are black, kind of very similarly to Agatha's fingers and Wanda's fingers. Just saying. So there's like the purple energy is a big part of this puzzle. I feel it. It's tied to these artifacts. It's tied to time, and it's tied to like bringing things through different multiverses into this story that is being weaved. I kind of feel like Charlie Day and It's Always Sunny now. So with that, I am gonna sign off for us, and we'll see everyone next week on Basic.